Okay, so I've restarted the recording. All right, so hope everyone's doing well and in good state and spirits. So let's jump right into it. As I mentioned in the chat or on the WhatsApp group, so I've created this vocabulary list for the first 6 paragraphs of the text. This is especially for you if you want to prepare somewhat beforehand. It just makes it easy if you have the words with you, but it also gives you an idea of how to structure your own vocab list, inshallah. So I'll be updating this on a regular basis. However, at the moment we have the first 6 paragraphs. So I'll quickly go through this, although it's quite self-explanatory. So on the right side we have al-fi'l, and the structure we follow is al-madi, al-mudari', and al-masdar. Okay, so this is the structure we need to use when we want to learn about the verbs. So for example, the first one, arafa, is the fi'l madi, right, the past tense. And then the mudari', the present, is ya'rifu, right? And then the masdar is irfanan or ma'rifa. Now some verbs will have 2 commonly used masdars. Okay, it's very common for a fi'l thulathi mujarrad, for a 3-lettered verb, to have more than one masdar form. Okay, so that's quite common, and if you access the Handsworth dictionary, this will be even more obvious. So this is how you need to learn it. Arafa, ya'rifu, irfanan, wa ma'rifa, together. And then, technically speaking, I shouldn't include the higher verb forms, because the higher verb forms are based on sama'i, right? So they're based on patterns. However, I've sometimes included them, or most of the time I've included them just for the meaning. Okay, in terms of the pattern, it should be known. Okay, so the pattern should be known. Having said that, though, some of the higher verb forms, when they have a weak letter or when they're not regular, they do slightly change in the pattern. Okay, so for example, ajra, the second one, is form number 4, akrama yukrimu ikram. But because the ending is an alif maqsura, or it's an alif, it doesn't have a vowel, it doesn't really rhyme with akrama, right? Because the alif does not take a fatha at the end. So there's slight changes, but still the overall pattern is the same. So ajra, yujri, ijra'an.
All of them out because I.
Yes, go ahead. So ajra, yujri, ijra'an is on the pattern of akrama, yukrimu, ikraman. Okay. And then the column after that is on the top. It says ma'na masdar al-fi'l. Okay, the meaning of the masdar of the verb. So here the meanings that I've given is not based on a tense. Okay, so for example, arafa has the meaning of to know, but if you want to use it in the past tense, arafa will be he knew, right? So I hope that's clear. So I'm giving you the base meaning, and then obviously if you use the verb in the past or present, then you have to understand it accordingly. Okay, so those 2 columns are for the fi'l. Then we come to the ism mufrad. Ism mufrad means basically a singular noun, right, or a singular ism. Sometimes the book uses singular verbs, and I will give you the plural. Sometimes it uses the plural, and I'll give you the singular. Now, usually with the singular and plural, you're not meant to memorize this or anything like that. But the thing is, usually when we teach plurals, we say that you just have to memorize the plurals because there is no set pattern. But actually, there are actually many patterns, right? There are many patterns for the plural, but because there are so many, we don't necessarily teach them that way. But the more you see plurals, the more you're likely to guess or to estimate what the plural of a word could be. Okay, like for example, look at this, ashbah, right? The third one, ashbah, and then I have ajza. Let me just highlight these. Okay, I don't want to do that. So I think, but you can see it. So I have shabah, ashbah, and then I have juzu and ajza. So the plural pattern is more or less somewhat on the same pattern. Okay, so it's good to have the plurals as well. It will give you an idea of what are some of the patterns of the plural, but also obviously it's there to form part of the vocab. Now, as you can see, some of the plurals I haven't included them because they're actually not very commonly used in the language, and it's not too important for you to know it, like khidam, zakhir, and jawf. Okay, and then the meanings. Now the meanings, obviously, especially with verbs can have many meanings. Okay, the meanings that I've given here are based on the context of the text. Okay, the meanings that are provided here are based on the context of the text. So it is one of the meanings, but it's not the only meaning. And I'm sure you appreciate that by now. Like especially with verbs can include many meanings. So the fi'l is derived from the masdar. That's a bit of a chicken and egg thing in Arabic. Is the fi'l derived from the masdar, or is the masdar derived from the fi'l? There are two schools of thought, and it's like one of those timeless debates. Which one came first? Did the masdar appear and then the fi'l came out of it, or did the fi'l appear and then the masdar came out of it? You can take it either way, but the one that we are following is that the masdar comes from the fi'l, because the root letter is arafa, past tense. That's the most simple form, and then from that, the masdar is sort of the masdar comes after that. Okay, any questions about the vocab list before we get into the text? Is that clear? All good? Okay, so this is also in the shared folder under the recordings. And if you also want to download the Word format, you can. If you want to change this in however format you like, that's up to you as well. So the base is the root letter, yeah. So when we say the base of a verb or the root of the verb, we mean the three letters. So for example, arafa, the root is ayn, ra, and fa, right? The simplest form of the verb, when you want to start using it in language, is the third person singular masculine. That's the simplest form of the verb. Okay, so that's why usually the third person singular masculine for thalathi mujarrad is actually the root letters itself. So it's nice, right? So the third person singular masculine also gives us the root letters as well. And that's why the verb conjugations always start with the third person singular masculine, because you're starting with the root and then you're adding extra letters to form other conjugations. Okay, so more on that in Intermediate Arabic Grammar 1 if you want to revise those conjugation and root letters topics and so on. Okay, so let's go to the text. Okay, so last week we said that the topic is al-Ghad. Al-Ghad means tomorrow. However, here in this context, it's talking about the future, right? Basically, what hasn't come yet, or what hasn't passed us yet. So al-Ghad is another word for, or in this, the author means the future. So I'm going to read the first paragraph. Okay. عرفت أني فكرت ليلة أمس فيما أكتب اليوم، وعرفت أني آخذ الساعة بقلمي بين أناملي، وأن بين يدي صحيفة بيضاء تسود قليلا قليلا كلما أجريت القلم فيها، ولكني لا أعلم هل يبلغ القلم مداه أو يكبو دون غايته وهل أستطيع أن أتمم رسالتي هذه أو يعترض عارض من عوارض الدهر في سبيلها لأني لا أعرف من شؤون الغد شيئا ولأن المستقبل بيد الله. Okay, so in summary, he is saying that I knew yesterday that I was planning for what to do today, right? And that I know that now in front of me there is a white page, and then it keeps turning black the more I take the pen and pass over the page, right? أجريت القلم فيها literally means start the pen over it or run the pen over it. In other words, when you start writing. But he's saying, however, I'm not sure if the pen will reach its objective, or will it fall face down without reaching its purpose, right? In other words, will I complete what I intended to start? And then he says, will I be able to complete this letter of mine, or one of the obstacles of time or obstacles of life will come in front of it or in its path, because I don't know anything about the matters of tomorrow, and that the future is in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or in the knowledge of God. Okay, and then he continues. And then once again the verb starts with Ain, Ra, Fa, and Ta. Okay. Now, when you see Ain, Ra, Fa, and Ta, you know that there's a verb called Arafa, and then you just have to figure out what is the ta referring to here? Is it Arafta, or is it Arafti, or is it Araftu, or is it Arafa? Right, because we don't have vowels. But because the context is so far about himself and it began with Araftu, we can most likely say that it should be Araftu as well. Once again, based on the context of the story. So because the sentence starts with a fi'al, you are always going to look for the fa'il. Right? Every time the sentence begins with a fi'al, the next thing you need to figure out is who is the doer, or what is the doer, or who is the fa'il, right? And here we have the fa'il attached to the fi'al itself. So araf, to. So when you have a fi'al, you definitely need a fa'il. But do you always need a maf'ul bihi? Not really, right? Everything else is, you can say, optional. It could be there or it could not be there. Right? However, in this case, we have it, because when you have a verb followed by anna, know that anna is a dependent clause, so everything that comes after that will be the maf'ul bihi, or the object of araftu, right? I knew. What did I know? Araftu, and then you have this word anni. There is no other way of reading this. Okay, the hamza on the top of the alif indicates that this is anni. Sometimes you will see a hamza underneath the alif. This will be inni. Okay, inni. But inni is never in the middle of a sentence. It will always be at the beginning of a sentence. Okay, so this is definitely anni. That's a combination of anna plus the ya al-mutakallim, or the ya of the first person. So anni, indeed I. Okay, so araftu anni, I knew that indeed I. And then here we have the verb labisa. Okay, labisa, and then this becomes labistu. And once again, this could be labisat, it could be labista, it could be labisti, right? But we know it's labistu once again based on the context of the story. So araftu anni labistu, right? And how did I know the spelling is araftu and labistu? This is where you need to rely or depend on your vocabulary knowledge. Okay, that the spelling is labisa. It could have been labasa, it could have been labusa, right? We know that there are 6 verbs for the thalathi mujarrad, but this is, if you're not sure, you check the hands way, or if you know it, you just apply it. So araftu anni labistu. Okay, so here when you have anni, And now he's used another verb. If you use another verb, then you have to, everything that comes after that will be connected to this verb, right? So it's word by word. So indeed, so I knew that that I labistu means to wear, that I wore athwabi, my clothes. Okay, athwab is the jama' of thawb, right? So the singular is thawb, which means a dress. Thawb. So the jama' is athwab. Athwabi fi sabah. So sabah is morning. Fi sabah. I knew that I wore or I dressed up in the morning, right? وَأَنَّهَا, once again, and that it is. Now, what is the annaha referring to? Referring to athwab. Referring to athwab. And how do we know that? Based on what's coming after that. وَأَنَّهَا لَا تَزَالُ. Okay, this I want you to take a note of it as one pair. Okay, and if you look at the vocab list, so after this I forgot to actually talk about the expressions. So here, one thing is vocab, right? Individual meanings, and then the next step is how do some words convey a specific meaning when they're used together. Okay, so that's what we mean by, loosely speaking, that's what we say. That's what we mean when we say expressions. Okay, so if you look at la tazalu means still. Okay, la tazalu means still. For example, I've got this from the book that we're currently reading. My clothes are still on me. In other words, I'm still having it. I'm still wearing my clothes. Right, so la tazalu, don't worry about the breakdown. But together, so tazalu is a fi'al mudari'. La tazalu is still. It could be la yazalu if it's talking about a masculine person or object, right? If you're talking about yourself, it becomes la azalu, I am still, right? So just learn it as a vocab. We're not going to go into details as to how it's constructed. Very, very common in the language. Okay, very common in the language. وَأَنَّهَا لَا تَزَالُ, and that indeed it is still فَوْقَ. I'm sure you know this vocab, فَوْقَ. And why is it mansub? Because it's adverb of place, right? ظرف مكان. لا تزال فوق جسمي. Jismi is my body. Okay, my body. Jismi. Hatta, when you see this word, is only one way of pronouncing it, and that's hatta, like this. Hatta means until. Very, very common word. You have to know this. Hatta means until. It has other meanings as well, but in this context, it means until. And then, of course, you know this word, al-an. Hatta al-an. So you see how you start reading words without the harakat, is that there are some words that are mabni. In other words, they never change their vocab, their vowels. And that makes it easy for us, right? Everything else, you have to depend on your knowledge of i'rab, and you have to depend on your knowledge of sarf. Okay? And then obviously, the spelling of the noun. Right, the spelling of the noun itself it comes through acquisition of vocabulary. Okay, so until now. So he's saying, I knew that I wore my clothes in the morning and that they are still on my body. You know, fawqa is above, but we can say on my body until now, hatta al-an, right? Walakinni, we came across this last week. However, walakinni la a'lamu, right? Now this one could be form number 4 as well. It could be a'lama yu'limu, and that's a verb. But how do we know it's a'lamu? It's, you know, the form number 1. It's because of the context once again, right? Walakinni, he's still talking about himself. La a'lamu. Another possibility is that it could be أعلم. أعلم means I teach. أعلم, right? So this is where vocab is important. So there's a few possibilities, but in this case it will be ولكني لا أعلم. I do not know. ولكني لا أعلم. هل Okay, هل أخلعها. So this verb خلع يخلع, and it's part of your vocab list. خلع يخلع means to take out something. It's usually used in the context of clothes. If I say خلعت ملابسي أو أثوابي, it means I took off my clothes. So he's saying here ولكني لا أعلم هل أخلعها. أخلعها. Okay, this is a فعل مضارع. فعل مضارع is مرفوع by default. So that's why it will be أخلع. Right? أخلع. No, this is not form number 4. This is form number 1. خلع يخلع. يخلع means he takes off. أخلع means I take off. Okay, so I hope that's clear. There is probably a form 4 which is like أخلع, which means he took off. Right? It might have the same meaning, I'm not sure. But here it's a fi'l mudari. We can't say it's a past tense. It won't make sense otherwise. ولكني لا أعلم هل أخلعها بيدي. This is a حرف جر. With my hands, بيدي. أو, or, and this تخلعها. The same verb still. تخلعها. أو تخلعها. Yad is hand again. Now you have to make a decision. So this word has appeared after the verb. Is it the fa'il or is it the maf'ul bihi? Well, maf'ul bihi is already attached here. تخلعها. So the verb here means someone took it out, right? Because ha is not a fa'il pronoun. Okay, ha is not a fa'il pronoun. It is a maf'ul bihi pronoun. If you look at your conjugation of verbs, in the mudari, it's yakhla'u, yakhla'ani, yakhla'una, takhla'u, takhla'ani, yakhla'na, and so on and so forth. Right? So this has to be the fa'il. Usually when you have a fi'l attached to a maf'ul bihi pronoun, usually the next word is the fa'il. Right? So it has to be marfu'. أو تخلعها يد الغاسل. Okay, غاسل means the one who washes. It comes from غسل يغسل. غاسل means the one who washes. Now this pattern, you can never ever get it wrong. Why? Because when you have an alif, a long vowel alif, right, it has to carry a fatha before it. So the letter before the alif will always carry a fatha. And this is the pattern of fa'il, ism fa'il. Right? So this pattern, ghasil, katib, right, qari, very common pattern. And the reason why it's easy to figure out is because it's actually literally based on the fa'il pattern. Right? The fa'il, ghasil, katib, qari, nasir, right? Nazir. So it's a very common pattern. So he says here, أو تخلعها يد الغاسل, or the hand of the one who washes, will take it out. So he's basically saying that, I've got my clothes now, it's on me. However, I don't know if I will be the one who will take off my clothes, or will the hand of the one washing will take it out. And this is referring to when someone passes away. Right? When someone passes away, there's a dedicated person who washes you, and so on and so forth. So in other words, he's saying, I'm not sure if I will even, I'm wearing a clothes now. I'm not sure if I'm the one who's going to take it off. I might just pass away. Right? So he's making the point that I have no clue what's going to happen in the future. Who's washing the dead body? Yeah. Is that clear, everyone? Do you have any questions about that passage? Irfan, yes, تفضل. Go ahead. Why is the feminine form used? Good question. Body parts that are dual will be considered feminine. Like feet is feminine, hands is feminine, right? Eyes they're feminine, ears are feminine. But head, for example, you only have one head. Ras will be masculine. Yeah. So dual body parts are treated or considered as singular feminine grammatically. But that's a very good question, and these are the sort of things that you can always pause and question. You don't have to know the answer, but out of curiosity, you can just note it there or ask, and inshallah, that's how slowly things will make more sense. Okay, so then the next passage. So the next passage starts with al-ghad. Now, because al-ghad is an ism, is this going to be a jumla fi'liya or ismiya?
Jumla ismiya?
Jumla ismiya, isn't it? So any sentence that begins with an ism, it will be a jumla ismiya. Any sentence that begins with a fi'l will be jumla fi'liya. So if it's an ism, then you know that the first word will be mubtada. So what do you need to find? You need to find the khabar, right? And remember, the khabar could be a word, could be a phrase, or it could be a full sentence, right? So here, al-ghad will definitely take dhamma because it is the mubtada. So here he says al-ghadu, so tomorrow or the future, and then immediately he brings a word shabahun. Okay, al-ghadu shabahun, and look how the author has put the dhamma here, just to make sure that the reader knows that this is where the mubtada and khabar is. This is where we put is, right? So tomorrow is shabah. Now shabah is an interesting word because nowadays shabah in Arabic is generally translated as ghost, right? So shabah is translated as ghost in English, and that's true. But here the author is not trying to say that tomorrow is a ghost. Right? But what is the idea of a ghost? The idea of a ghost is that it is something that's vague and not very clear, right? And usually they say it's a spirit of the dead body and so on and so forth, right? And sometimes when you see someone walking by really quickly, it's a bit of an expression where we say, I think I just saw a ghost. Like something that's really fast. You're not sure what it is. You can't decipher it. You can't understand it. But you saw something, right? So here, shabah refers to something that's very unclear. Right? It's there. You see signs of it, but it's not clear, and you can't really say anything further about it. Okay? So I don't want to translate this as, tomorrow or the future is like a ghost. Because that's what you will see when you put it in the dictionary. But the idea is that tomorrow is an unknown object. Okay, and here actually he clarifies it with a sifa. So shabah, sabahun, right? Mubhamun. Mubham means vague. Yeah, it's mawsuf sifa, yeah. Shabahun mubhamun. So vague. So tomorrow is a vague unknown object. Okay? So that's one way of understanding it. Another way of understanding it is you could say that there's a comma here. Okay, and they both make sense. You can say tomorrow is unknown, comma, vague. Okay? Or you can say tomorrow is a vague, unknown object. Okay, I'm sure there's a better way of expressing that, but I think you get the point. Okay, so because Arabic does not use commas, here it fits both. Either it could be two khabars. You can say al-ghadu shabahun mubhamun. In other words, tomorrow is unknown and vague. Or you can say that tomorrow is a vague unknown object. Okay, so you can use it as mawsuf sifa, you can understand it as mawsuf sifa, or you could understand it as two khabars. Right? And this happens. You can say, Zaydun tawilun taqiyun. Right? Zayd is tall and pious. So in Arabic you don't put the waw or the comma. That's a style of like for example in the Quran, there's a verse that talks about the attributes of God, and it says, هو الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الملك القدوس السلام المؤمن المهيمن. Right? These are all, there's actually commas after them, but they're not there. The commas are not there because commas don't exist in Arabic. The punctuation marks. It's used in modern, but it wasn't used in classical Arabic. So I hope that was clear. You can read it both ways because mubham is an attribute. So you could say it's mawsuf sifa, or you can say there's two khabars, and it's completely fine. At the end of the day, the meaning is conveyed, and that's the most important thing. Okay, so the word mubham I've included in the vocab list. It's a very common word as well. Mubham means vague. It could mean mysterious, right? In Arabic they say هذا الشخص مبهم. This person is a bit vague. It's not very clear. So that's how it's used. Okay, so al-ghadu shabahun mubhamun yatara'a. Which form do you think this belongs to? It's definitely a high verb form. Very common Urdu. Oh, okay, so they use the same word. There you go. Free vocab for you. So which verb do you think this belongs to from the higher verb forms? Yatara'a. Gulnat says form 5. Irfan 6. Gulnat changed your mind. Qatala, so form number 3. If you say qatala, then the mudari is yuqatilu. It's a bit short because here you have, ta, so ya, ta, ra, hamza, and alif. It's a bit longer than that. Yeah, it's tafa'ala, isn't it? Form number 6. Taqabala, yataqabalu. Right? Tara'a, yatara'a. Is that clear, everyone? There is an irregularity at the end, and that's why maybe it doesn't really rhyme with the actual verb, but it does. So taqabala, tara'a, yataqabalu, yatara'a. Okay. Now, what does this verb mean? We go back to our vocab list. I think I included it as part of the expressions. Yeah. So yatara'a li. The reason why I included it here is because it usually comes with the harfu jar li. Okay. Yatara'a. What do you think what do you guys think the root letter is? The root letter is actually a bit of a common word that we've come across before. What do you think the three root letters are of that verb? يتراءى.
رؤى.
It's ra'a, isn't it? Ra, Hamza, and then alif at the end. Ra, ra'a, ra'a. Yeah, so we don't say ya at the end. It has a shape of a ya, like ra'a has a shape of a ya, but we don't say it's a ya, right? It's an alif. So ra'a, and we've come across this before. So this is how you write it, ra'a. Okay, it's irregular. It's irregular. So the mudari, for example, is also irregular. It becomes yara, right? So this is the spelling. Ra'a, yara. So that's the root letters. This is not an yeah. Okay, it's an alif. Okay, this is an alif. So ra'a and yara. This means to see, right? Ra'a means to see. If I say ra'aytu, it means I saw, and yara means he is seeing. Yara al-manzar, he's seeing the view, for example. Yara al-bahr, he is looking, at the beach or at the ocean, right? So we have ra'a, yara. Tara'a is form number 6 of the verb, which means, so yatara'ali means to show oneself, right? So to show oneself to someone, to show oneself to, and that to is what the li is, right? If I say yatara'a ar-rajulu lil mar'a, for example, someone's marrying or whatever, the man is presenting himself to the woman, or presents himself to the woman, right? Yatara'a, to present someone, or to show, itself or someone or an object to something else. Okay, it could also be to reveal oneself, right? But that li is usually used because this verb tara'a needs two objects. Okay, someone is presenting himself or herself to someone else, and that to someone else, we use the li to convey that meaning. So, and here we have nadir. So nadir comes from the verb nazara. Okay, it's a common verb, nazara yanzuru, from nasara yansuru. I think we've come across this before, that's why I haven't included in the vocab list. It means to look. So similar to ra'a. Ra'a and nazara are, you can say, the synonyms in meaning. Okay? So nadir, very good, Gulnaz, is the isim fa'il of the verb nazara yanzuru. Okay? It's the isim fa'il. It's the isim fa'il. And isim fa'il, once again, I said you can't mistake it, because it's only one pattern for the thulathi mujarrad. Okay, so he's saying here tomorrow. So he's saying here tomorrow is unknown, vague, where it presents, or you can say presenting itself to the one who is looking. Okay, and who's the one who is looking? Who's the nazar in this story? What do you guys think? The writer, the author? Is it just the author? Does the future only involve the author and nobody else? Third party? Well, it's everybody, isn't it? This includes everyone. Us, the author, right? The whole humanity. Right? So the nazir, the one who is looking, could be anybody. Right? It could be anybody, any human being falls in this category. Right? Tomorrow is unknown, vague, presenting itself to the viewer, to the one who is looking. This is us. We're the one who is always anticipating the future. Right? So presenting itself to the one who is looking, or to the onlooker, or to the one who is seeing, from a far place. Right? From a far place. This is a very nice imagery, right? So imagine, so he's saying that tomorrow, it's like, he's saying it's like a, let's use ghost, because everybody knows the meaning of ghost. Like tomorrow is like a ghost, very unknown, it's vague, it just presents itself from a very far place, right? And this is true because we can get some clues about the future, right? You can plan something, there is predictions about what's going to happen, the weather, and so on. So it presents itself from a very far place, right? It reveals itself to the one who's looking from a far place. So it's not clear at all, right? And then he says, فَرُبَّمَا رُبَّمَا. Memorize this. This is always used and the spelling never changes. رُبَّ رُبَّمَا. Rubbama means maybe. Okay? فَرُبَّمَا. So maybe, كَانَ مَلَكًا رَحِيمًا. Malak means an angel, and I've included it as part of your vocab list. Rahim is someone who is merciful. Okay, like we say, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most compassionate, the most merciful. Right? And we have a very simple kana sentence here. So now, whenever you have kana, you're always going to look for ism kana and khabar kana. Now, khabar kana is mansub, right? And here they've included it, so you don't think that this is the ism. So where is the ism? فَرُبَّمَا كَانَ مَلَكًا رَحِيمًا. Where is the ism of kana? It's a damir mustatir, isn't it? It's a hidden pronoun. And who is the hidden pronoun referring to? The he or the it? Who is it referring to? Or what is it referring to? The onlooker, not really. What is the thing that the onlooker is trying to see from far? Right? It's actually the future. Right? The future. This idea of tomorrow. So maybe فَرُبَّمَا كَانَ مَلَكًا رَحِيمًا. Maybe it will be, or it was, maybe it is a merciful angel. Okay, maybe it is a merciful angel, or it was a merciful angel, right? So Malak is an angel, and Rahim is merciful. وَرُبَّمَا, and maybe, kana, maybe it is, kana is used for past tense, but sometimes it can be used to indicate like, some very close time that's about to come. وَرُبَّمَا كَانَ شَيْطَانًا رَجِيمًا. So this is it's very common, I guess, Muslim or Islamic terminology. Shaitan and Rajima. So shaitan is the devil, and Rajim means cursed. Okay, so Rajim is cursed, and we use this all the time. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. So I seek refuge in God from the accursed Satan or shaitan. Okay, so this is Satan, shaitan, Satan. Rajim is cursed. So the author is saying maybe, so tomorrow is like a vague, unknown object. It presents itself to the onlooker from a very far place. Maybe it is a merciful angel, and maybe it is, a cursed angel. What is he trying to say here? What is he trying to say? What is he trying to convey? What is he comparing a merciful angel and a cursed Satan to? Very good. That's it. It's either good or something that is bad, right? Because we usually associate an angel with mercy and goodness, and we usually associate Satan with evil and badness, right? So tomorrow, so this idea of tomorrow is very vague. It's either going to be good or it's going to be bad, right? Like, like the coronavirus numbers, we in Victoria, every day we're looking at the news. If it increases, it's bad. If it decreases, it's good, right? We don't know. We're just, always hoping for the best. Okay, so that's the meaning he's trying to convey here. So you can see that this sentence was a very simple kana sentence, but the ism wasn't there. And sometimes the authors, they do include the harakat just to alert the reader that this is not the ism kana, because it will change the meaning otherwise. Then in that case it will be for example, kana malakun rahim, one would be like an angel, a merciful angel was. Or if these weren't there, you could say kana malakun rahiman, right? The angel was merciful. So it doesn't give the meaning. I mean if the harakat weren't there at all, let's say if this tanween fatha wasn't there, then you would actually have to entertain a few options and then see which one makes the most sense. That's just how it is when you have no vowels. Even very experienced readers, one thing I've noticed with Arabic is, and I've seen even like scholars of Arabic, when they read, they will never read like without ever stopping. In English you can read without stopping because you just read the letters. It's all about pronunciation, even if you have no clue about the meaning. But with Arabic, you can't do that. You will always be stuck somewhere because there could be a few possibilities, so you have to give it some thought. How kana works here? Kana is in a sense like, perhaps it would be, right? Perhaps it would be a merciful angel. So that's how it's being used. Perhaps it would be a and that's why Rubama here, maybe it's better to say perhaps. Perhaps it will be, or it would be, a merciful angel, or perhaps it would be a cursed shaitan. I hope that's clear, Ghulam. Yeah. Nasab is indicating khabar only. Yeah, so nasab here is the khabar. Right? So this is mawsuf sifa. So mawsuf sifa is taking the place of khabar. Right? So this is the mawsuf. You can say this is mansub because it's khabar kana. This is mansub because it is sifa. Right? And same thing with shaitan and rajim. They're mawsuf sifas. Okay. Bal. Okay, he continues. Bal. Now bal means rather. Rather, maybe, rubbama. So he's continuing to compare, right? Bal rubbama kana, right? Or perhaps it would be sahabatan sawda. Sahaba, I've included this in the vocab list, means cloud. Okay. Bal rubbama kana sahabatan sawda. But rather perhaps it could it could have been, or it could be a black cloud. Sahabatan Sauda. Sauda is the feminine form of Aswad. Sauda is the feminine form of Aswad. Okay, and why is the feminine form used? Because Sahabatan, cloud, is feminine, right? With the term marbuta. Now, is a black cloud or black clouds good news or bad news?
Bad news.
Why would it be bad news?
Forecasting bad weather.
Well, I guess if you were planning a picnic, then that's bad news, isn't it? But you know, when you read Arabic poetry and literature, black clouds or dark clouds is always a good sign. Why? Because they hardly get rain over there. So rain for them is good news. It's actually very good. Okay, now this is a matter of perspective, right? So as I said, you know, for example, here in Melbourne, there's usually dark clouds every second or third day. It's very unusual. And someone could say, I'm so tired, it's so dark and gloomy, and it's raining, and I can't go out. I mean, you can't go out anyway, but let's say even if you wanted to go out for that 1 hour exercise, if it rains, it's difficult. But in Arabic literature and poetry, dark clouds, or here black clouds, or really dark and black clouds, are always a good sign, because it brings rain, because it hardly rains in those lands. When I was in Egypt, I think about 2 years ago, it was actually it was one of the worst days of rain in Egypt. Like the rain was so much, and because it hardly rains there, right? But the rain was so much that it was actually not, it wasn't too much compared to what we get in Australia, let's say in Sydney and Melbourne. But because it was more than usual, the city was really struggling. There were hardly any you know, good plans to distribute the water and so on. So there were floods and cars were floating around. So keep in mind that dark clouds or very black clouds are a good sign, because rain is good. Rain brings vegetation, right? A farmer's best friend is rain. A farmer's best friend is most of the time is clouds. You know, that's how their vegetation works. So similar thing with in this context. So dark clouds or sahaba, and if you read the poetry, you know, poetry of classical Arabic literature, they say, you know, especially the poets that praise rulers, they say, you know, this ruler is like a dark cloud. It gives and it gives and it gives, and he's so generous. So this idea of dark cloud is very common in Arabic literature. So you will encounter it more and more if you keep reading these sorts of works, especially, you know, poetry and prose and so on. Okay, so here he's saying rather maybe it would be a dark cloud, a black cloud, right? So in other words, good news, right? Good news. Okay, إذا هبت. What does إذا mean? You would have come across it before. إذا.
If.
Yeah, if or when, right? So that's what it means. إذا. So here we'll say, let's use when. إذا هبت. Now this is a past tense verb. هب الريح, right? Or هبت الريح. And by the way, rih is treated feminine. Okay, it's considered feminine, even though it doesn't have a sign of femininity. It doesn't have tamarbuta, but it's one of those words where it's considered feminine, and that's why we use habba. Habbat means when the wind blows. Okay, when the wind blows. So let's say you're sitting down, it's a calm weather, and then suddenly habbat al-rih, right? And suddenly the wind blew. Yes, that's what it means, the blowing of the wind. Okay. بل ربما كان سحابة سوداء إذا هبت عليها ريح. If, so he's saying there's a dark black cloud, if the wind blows over it, over this black cloud. Okay, if the wind blows over it, عليها, not just a wind, but a cold wind, ريح باردة. Why am I putting these in Rafa state? Why am I saying ريح باردة? What would be the reason? The fa'il of which verb? Is the for habbat, isn't it? Fa'il of habbat. And once again here, you have to be, every time you see a verb, the next thing is, where is the fa'il? Is the fa'il mustatir or is it zahir? Is it there or is it not there? Right? If it's not there, then you have to look, what is the pronoun referring to? Is there an attached pronoun or is there a hidden pronoun? Right? And here, habbat alayha will be muta'alliq, and then rihun barida is the fa'il, right? So rihun is marfu' because it's fa'il to habbat. Barida is a sifa, cold wind. Okay? إذا هبت عليها ريح باردة. Right? When cold wind blows over it, حللت. حللت. What verb form is this? حللت. What do you guys think? حللت. It's form 2, exactly. Right? And I've included it here. حلل. حلل يحلل تحليل means to break down, for something to break down. Okay? To break down, don't think of this as, you know, a human being breaking down. In other words, they're emotional or they're going through a tough time. Breaking down means if you have something solid or something that can be that can be broken down into smaller pieces, this is what it's referring to. Okay, I'm not sure if that's the right word to use for clouds. Let's see what else he says. So when the cold wind blows over it, حللت, you know, it broke down or it dispersed or it split it into smaller pieces. What do you think it's referring to? حللت. Why is it feminine? It's referring to the wind, isn't it? To the rih. So حلل. So this cold wind dispersed or broke down. What did it break down? أجزاءها. Okay, so this is a bit of a scientific thing. I'm not 100% sure if this is how it is, but let me complete the meaning. So basically he's saying, right, حللت أجزاءها. أجزاء is the jama of juz. Juz is one part. Ajza is the plural of juz, which means parts. Ajza refers to parts. And I should have it here. Yeah, so juz, ajza is part. Okay, so part is the singular and then plural will be parts. So حللت أجزاءها. Okay, so he's saying here, you have a black cloud or dark cloud. However, when the cold wind blows over it, حلل, it breaks down its parts. In other words, you know, when a cold wind blows over a dark cloud, it starts to break it down to the point where you think it's a good news, you think it's about to rain, and then a cold wind blows and it starts breaking the cloud down, and then the rain does not appear anymore, or the rain does not come down anymore. Okay, so that's the imagery here. حللت أجزاءها وفرقت ذراتها. Very similar meaning. Okay, فرقت is form number 2 as well. It means to disperse, to break down, right, to scatter. فرقت ذراتها. So ذرات is the so dharra in Arabic is the smallest matter, right? So now usually when you put in dharra in the dictionary it says atom, but in back in those days, like thousands of whenever Arabic was, I guess you could say, used, dharra, the smallest item at that time, was like dharra was used for a small ant, and sometimes it was also used for the dust, for the spectacle of the dust, the dust that flows, in your room when you turn on the light, sometimes you see dust or particles flowing. So that's what dharra refers to. Is it not in nasb? It is actually nasb, but this is sound feminine plural, right? So sound feminine plural, like muslimatun, and then it becomes muslimatin for nasb, and then muslimatin for jar as well. So the nasb and the jar have fatha. So here dharra and dharrat, just like muslimat. Yeah, I mean the sound feminine plural is used usually for human attributes, but here with the feminine form, they're usually a bit more flexible to use the sound feminine plural. So dharratiha, it'll become dharratiha, and it's still in the nasb state. Okay, so we can stop here. So it's basically saying, you think it's good news, but then something happens immediately. In real life, plans could change, or there could be a pandemic, or maybe your car broke down, or whatever. عارض من عوارض الدهر, right? An obstacle from the obstacles of life. So you plan, everything looks good. It's like a dark cloud, bringing good news, rain, and so on. And then suddenly a cold wind comes and disperses the clouds, right? Just like in life, something could happen, and then our plans could change for the worse. Okay, so we'll stop here, inshallah. Any questions or comments before we end? Ma'asalama, that's good. That's good. All right, we'll see you guys next week. If you can, go through the vocab list. Otherwise, we'll see you next Saturday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
السلامة إلى اللقاء في سبيل الله. السلام عليكم.
إلى اللقاء.
وعليكم السلام. السلام عليكم.